At 5:30. And the roll call, Council at Large, Boots.
Here.
At Large, Spear.
Here.
Council Ward number 1, Leeper.
Here.
Ward number 2, Anderson.
Here.
Ward number 3, McNeil.
Here.
Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, are there any agenda additions? None. Is there a motion to approve this agenda?
So moved.
Boots with the first.
Second.
Anderson with the second.
Spear.
Yes.
Leeper.
Yes.
McNeil.
Yes.
Boots.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Okay, then we'll move on to the strategic planning session. Is there a motion to open this? Is that right? Yeah.
So moved.
Spear with the first.
Second.
Leeper with the second.
Leeper.
Yes.
McNeil. Boots.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
Okay, and then with the opening of that, we should limit this to an hour. Is that good at most? All right. So with that, the floor is open to the council members for anything that they would like to discuss. Anybody want to start us off? Well, I can. I'd like to, I have had brief discussions with Tim about this, about having like an internet feasibility study done, because I believe we have fiber optic run to the town, but it's not in the town to houses or businesses. And then with that feasibility, community Wi-Fi downtown. And this is just me throwing it out there. My thoughts would have been from like Happy Joe's to Family Foods, those blocks, because it's kind of downtown. So, there you go.
And doing a piece.
Phone company.
That's what, because I don't know who owns the fiber optic that's running into the outskirts of town, but it would be.
I think it's Iowa Network.
ITN.
Iowa Network Services.
Yes, I think they have it, but it's just to the city limits.
Okay.
Well,
We checked in with that when we talked about running the fiber ourselves for City Hall and the buildings,
Okay.
but it is not in Tipton.
Okay.
I will say that someone had suggested to me that we look into some, having some competition in that area, like we have, Clarence Telephone Company, Mechanicsville Telephone Company is laying tons of fiber throughout the county right
Okay.
now. And just, seeing if we could get somebody to come to Tipton and get some competition, because I know some of the current internet connections, we've had trouble at the courthouse with.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So-
last winter it was
And
pretty
they're not
terrible.
so always very accommodating when we have issues, and so some competition would be nice.
When Sharon get theirs straightened out.
I don't know, I moved on.
Yeah, me too.
Personally.
So is the courthouse.
No, I had them out last week, and they can see huge increases and decreases in my line. They don't know what's causing it, and they said, "Oh, okay," and laughed. And I think that's where I'm going to live, with high and low. I mean, to the point of not even being able to
I moved on to MediaCom. They seem to be a little better.
Which one?
MediaCom.
Oh, okay.
can I say a couple of things, Brian?
I don't know, can you?
Well, I was just going to say a couple of things about the network services and stuff like that. What little I know about it. INS has one here in town. Mediacom's got one, and there's a third on the poles that, Lorna, we talked about this about a year ago. They were out of Kansas City. Do you remember we were trying to find a pole attachment agreement with
Right.
them?
I thought that was MediaCom. Oh,
no.
Midwest Cable or Triax were the
Triax.
previous companies.
Yes.
before it became MediaCom.
Yes. And Chris and I did talk last year to Clarence Telephone Company about doing some stuff, but it was just kind of talk. Never really went any further than that because they wanted the electric department to supply the duct from the pedestals to the houses. And I said, well, I'm not against doing that, but there's going to have to be some, money change hands and stuff like that. But I didn't Tipton back in the 90s pass a communication utility
Broadband
ordinance.
kind of thing, yeah.
Yes, because
Referendum,
Tipton was one of the first ones to pass that. I remember that.
yeah.
So,
And that's kind of where it was dropped, I think.
well, they didn't.
Well, I think they talked to different companies, but I think there was a lot of discussion on telephone versus TV. Because the reason that kind of came up is because we were having a lot of issues with, at that time, I don't know if it was MediaCom or if it was Triax or Midwest Cable, one of those, trying to get the cable in better condition or have better service. And then they decided that they would upgrade the head end, and so then it was kind of just let go. But yeah,
Okay.
there is that option out there.
So Brian, are you asking that we maybe send out for bids or quotes on to 3 or 4 of these places?
So I don't even know if you want a consultant to look at it first, or if we basically cold call the companies themselves, or what we can do with that. That's why I just brought that up, so to know what the specific steps would be.
Not sure either. There is a process for that, but that's as much as I know.
All right.
Didn't Tipton check into that one other time?
Pardon?
Didn't Tipton check into that one other time? I thought they talked about doing fiber optics and stuff.
Tipton? Don't know. I think that's what Floyd was
I
saying.
think
Yeah,
that's what Floyd is talking
Yeah,
about.
when
Years ago, yeah.
yeah, last year, I can't think of the guy's name from Clarence, but he come down, met with me and Chris about it, and we talked for probably an hour. But it was just kind of left at that because the biggest problem was how are we going to implement all of this, and we didn't know kind of because all the other things that were going on at the time, we didn't feel like, Chris and I didn't feel like we could do it justice at the time to work with it. And that was back in like June or July, because the airport issues had come up and some other things. And
would it be more feasible to have it available to all the businesses instead of just utilities to
Then you're talking about the Wi-Fi?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's several businesses down here on South Street that could probably use that, and, what is it, the extension office, and be feasible for
Possibly.
everybody to be
My thinking with
connected.
with those little blocks was just to have the downtown, have people downtown have that be accessible there, but yeah, I didn't think about other businesses and whatnot.
So you're talking about like a free Wi-Fi service?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there would be costs involved to somebody,
Oh, yes, there would be.
yeah.
I've looked up some, I can't think of it, some communities that have done it, and they've done it ad-based, where anytime that you get onto the network, there's an ad that you have to click through, and that offset a lot of the maintenance costs. And then another community partnered with the businesses in that area to where that they got internet service free because they house the actual equipment.
Yeah.
So you didn't have to look for places to put it. So, there you go.
We've done, in Geneseo years ago, there was an ad-based Wi-Fi antennas set up here and there around town. It did some likely spots like the Big City Park and school, football field, and it was paid for initially by part by the Chamber of Commerce, and in part by the local telephone company, and in part by the city but it was the ad revenue that was, that sustained the cost of the bandwidth.
Anybody else have anything?
I would just like to make a statement. I think this planning session is great. I'm glad that we're having it. But in the future, if one of us has something to share, I would hope that we would put it as a discussion item on the agenda and not have to have a special meeting to discuss things like this, just in the future.
Because I actually made up a whole list of stuff too that I wanted to bring up that have been banging around in my head. Another one that Tim and I have kind of researched a little bit would be zoning ordinance against the storage and manufacture of marijuana within city limits.
Do we have some?
No.
Okay, good.
And if you want to prevent that, I would assume.
I'm just like, what capabilities for doing that?
Didn't know it was a problem.
But, well, we had, last fall we had, the name of the program is Tall Cop Says Stop, and he travels the country watching drug laws and how they implement them and stuff like that. And he said that the bigger companies keep an eye on what states might be getting ready to look into passing and legalizing. And he said that these companies come in a good 5 years before law is actually passed and start buying up land and buildings to manufacture and store. And what he said was Tipton would be pretty much one of the perfect spots if that were to ever come to pass, because of the proximity to Davenport, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, and the relatively cheaper rents here. But the one big thing that I would like also to look at with that ordinance is to, if it ever gets passed legally, federally, is to revisit that ordinance, because that was in his research and a little bit of mine, one of the biggest issues with, like, say, Colorado is that since it's not legally federally, they can't really use banks. So it's an all-cash business, so they have to walk out with literally like bags of cash. And so now these companies have had to upgrade to military-grade security to keep strong-arm robberies from happening. Yeah, a whole bunch of unintended consequences.
Does our ordinance currently address this at all? No. Okay.
I wasn't able to find anything with a scan of other municipalities in the state, so it would be a new thing.
Okay.
And there probably are other states that are further down the road on this.
Well, I sent you guys an email, and there was one in Florida.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a community in Florida.
So what are we looking at, possibly researching some sort of an ordinance that we could incorporate to?
Within our conventional zoning regulations. Excuse me.
Yeah, like I said, I think one of the bigger components of that would be to revisit that when and after it becomes federally legal too. I wouldn't want to take those small businesses either, if that was their business, but.
So who do we need to consult with drafting an ordinance?
Well, we could start with that community in Florida, and I will have your email from back then, and see what theirs looks like, and then it would have to be Iowaized to meet Iowa statutes on those kind of zoning regulations. So we'd start with trying to find a model, which, like I said, I look for statewide, didn't find anything. But we look abroad. I see nodding of heads.
Well, it's better to be proactive than reactive about it.
And a $100,000 strong arm heist with lots of weapons.
Well, and in light of the money that's
volunteer.
I hear it's quite lucrative.
Mm-hmm. Well, I thought it was great that the Hardacre fundraiser, I went to that. It was a great time. It was packed all night. And I think it's, from what I understand, they're going to need some help from the council in the future. And so I would like to hopefully keep that going, you know, when economically feasible. So, and it sounded like the state legislature is also, they liked the idea of keeping that old building around as well on Saturday when they were here.
Hey, you did a nice job.
Well, thank you. My mouth kept getting drier and drier. As I got to the
Who's the
podium.
wind?
Yeah, yeah.
And I would like to thank the city for the opportunity to go to that. We had a nice time. It was
Oh, good.
enjoyable, so appreciate that.
And on that, the fact that the governor arrived with a plaque is at least an open door to other state resources that if you were to arrive at the right state office for that kind of support, they'd answer the phone, they'd come to the door.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure what has been done in the past. I know that there's been a study prepared for rehab of the building, so that's already a step that's been made. But if there's an opportunity to be had, we certainly support looking into it.
I thought at one time also they had talked about taking some of us on a tour of,
Yes,
yeah,
like, is it Toledo
maybe there.
that has the older?
Mhm. And I'd really like to be a part of that.
Mhm.
That would be interesting, I think.
Has anyone checked into this upcoming seminar that's being held in Cascade as to how many council members can attend that?
I cannot, but,
Oh, the question is, how many can be at a meeting without running afoul of the Open Meetings Act?
Council,
Thanks for the reminder, Don Allen.
Mhm.
because that's really something that they're going to discuss that would pertain to our city. And we might be able to get some ideas and some information as to how to go about getting some of these problems resolved.
Is that June 11th?
Hmm?
What was the date? June 11th on that? Do you remember?
I got it at home there.
I can't remember the date either.
I think it's, yeah, I think it's
It's a Thursday night.
May or June, it's on a Thursday.
I can't remember the date.
It's $40, I think, per person, and it's a dinner. They start the meeting and then break for dinner and have dinner and then finish it up with questions and answers. The last one.
Seems like it started like at 5:30 maybe, was that?
Yeah, I think registration is at 5 o'clock and it starts at 5:30. And, but it'd be good information for all of us. But if we're not allowed to meet together at a meeting like that without it being a quorum, we need to decide to get
Two people.
two people to go.
I'll send a query out tomorrow. I completely forgot.
Okay. I didn't bring my calendar with me, so I had it written down on the other.
you said Cascade, and then June 16th.
This has been a crazy week.
Is it June 16th?
I think so, it's the only one in Cascade,
Mhm.
and it's at from 5:30 to 8.
Sounds right.
I'll be in Costa Rica.
Okay, let us know.
Oh, gosh.
At least
I
you
said,
have a valid
let us know.
excuse.
Here to take my trip.
Oh, that's
Yep, with the school.
okay.
When Callahan was in town, him and I met for a little bit, and he said that at one of his towns that he was the city manager at, they did something really neat. I'm gonna look through my notes. They set up a tour of other towns that are similar in size. There was about 40 of them, and they all pitched in to pay for a chartered bus. And they looked at the map and basically set out, what did they do? I think they hit 5 towns in 2 days. 3 on the way out, they stayed the night, and then 2 on the way back in. And there they all had the mayors meet the mayors, council people meet the council people, business people meet other business people, and then share ideas that work in their town, what the pitfalls of the projects they did, and learn from their mistakes. And he said, number one, it was a really good team building exercise, and then number 2, they just learned a lot about the other towns around them and the resources that they have. So I thought that might be something kind of neat to try and put together at some point.
Yes, there would be.
Kind of like what Linda came up with Animos and having the open houses downtown and having realtors. I mean, just getting ideas from other towns that work for them.
Exactly.
How's that, for the businesses downtown, they get a grant sometimes? How's that work?
Well, that's through the TDC. It's administered that so much is allocated per year, and it's loaned out by the TDC.
And that's paid back?
And that's paid back. So, no, there's 2 items there. There's a grant, which is for facade refurbishing.
Drip.
Fund, yes. And that's mainly for improvements in the building or interior. And then there's the revolving grant, which we have about 90,000. Is that what it is, Doc?
Sounds about right.
Okay.
The grant was for $94,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a federal grant. We were able to loan that out and it's paid back. And so we just keep re-loaning out the money. It rotates up. And that has gone a long way to refurbishing the downtown. And just looking at it from 10 years ago to the way it is today, it's not the same community.
Yeah, I talked to a mayor up north, and they got a program where you can borrow up to $10,000 interest-free, pay it back in 5 years. That's how they've been revitalizing their downtown.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They can use it for whatever, interior, exterior.
Mm-hmm. No, it's just that you gotta give the people a little bit of a push. And once the neighbors are fixed up theirs, then they start looking at the imperfections of their own, and that's exactly what has happened here. And even some businesses have fixed them up without even applying for any of it, so it's been a plus all the way around, complete success.
Well, anybody talk with Paula Orwin? She had some concerns about some of the downtown buildings that are pretty bad.
And that's, some of those are enforcement matters, and they can be sometimes successful, often time consuming, but it's a matter of deciding that we're going to do that and require folks to repair those defects that are citable. And it seems to me like we started on one a month or so ago. I haven't checked back to see what process we've had with the demand to essentially board up windows, and I think we've got one where we've sent the demand to conform, and some time has to run, and then we'll, they don't respond, we'll board up the windows, and then we lien the property owner for the cost of that repair, if you will.
the subject of me bringing up Paula, what about, we need to do something with the snow ordinance for the downtown to, that 72-hour thing is not soon enough.
That's 24.
Is it 24 or?
I thought it was 72.
No, I think it's 24 or
Yeah,
48, it's not
24.
that long.
It's not that long.
No.
We did have a conversation.
I was thinking
at the-
more 2 hours after the snow.
I think they give them, after the snow has stopped, it's like a 24-hour period to get it cleaned up.
We had talked about at Chamber of Commerce, a collaborative effort where we let them know when we plan to come through and probably, because part of the problem with downtowns here and anywhere is that, you know, it snows and some owners get out and they throw the stuff, you know, right out into the street because it's the only place to go, and then we plow and it winds up back, and we wind up throwing it back and forth a couple of times. It's irritating to everybody. So we talked about a collaborative effort where we let Linda know, and she relays that to the chamber membership and said, okay, here's what's gonna happen, get out there and get your snow out of here. And then there was a further proposal for someone who would, for a, you know, per storefront fee, come by and get the snow out in a timely fashion, off the walks and into the street, and then it get plowed at the end and hauled away. I haven't heard any more about that, but that's not a bad methodology. That would be the owner's responsibility to undertake, and if they could collaboratively do that, it would be terrific. But we'll look and see for sure that our notice is within the realm of
Yeah.
the norm.
In '06, they passed an ordinance, it's 24 hours of the end of the last snowfall.
So it's an enforcement issue, because if somebody goes 72 hours,
Yeah,
We actually tagged somebody
We
last
did.
winter. Yeah.
one of the more noteworthy sidewalk snow removal scofflaws got whacked, got their attention. So we'll see if they remember come next snow season. Memories can be short.
You know, how to approach that, because, you know, is it up to the city to say, here's someone out there that will contract for all of this? Because if you get one person, he gets 5 or 6 billings, he could do that fairly reasonable, I would think, if he's gonna do it all in one swoop.
It would be my preference, just administratively, if that was something that the business owners collaboratively did and kept the city out of it.
Okay.
It just becomes more complicated when we get
Right.
involved, and if the owners would do that, I know there's other communities that have done this, it becomes a little more self-enforcing when your neighbor says, will you please clear your walk? And that kind of suasion can work. But in terms of responding, if someone doesn't clear their walk, I've been in a lot of cities where the enforcement has been on a complaint basis only, which tends to inhibit enforcement, because people don't want to rat on their neighbor, if you will. So this past winter, as I came to understand the way things have been going, I said to our enforcement folks, now, you see a walk that's not cleared, they're gonna get the citation, and we put together the sort of citation you have to send, so that they know that we're serious.
There is an issue, too, with the use of excessive salt on the sidewalks and our cement bricks in the walkway. And there are a few businesses that have almost gravelled their sidewalks with salt. And some of the bricks there are being compromised.
Losing their facade.
Yeah. And that is a concern that it'll be an expensive fix if it's allowed to continue on.
That might have to be a conversation. I don't think there's anything that we could say that someone is intentionally harming by their,
No, it's not intentional, it's a
Usually
safety
that's
concern,
assault.
they get the ice off the sidewalk, and you have to commend them for
Yeah.
doing that. But there's a,
That may have to be an individual conversation.
yeah,
I think it has
Conversation.
been,
Oh,
at different times, there's been conversations about that with the businesses. But you know, you might talk to one person and the next person might be the one that does it the next time.
right, right.
It's just hard to say, but I do know they have been spoken to about it.
Is there anything better they can use than salt?
mhm.
sure there is.
Well, and is that something you can put out a reminder, maybe on the website every year, in the paper? I know we print our snow removal policy and what people can do and can't do every year, just to remind them that, you know, hey, there's some things you wanna watch for, don't do this.
That's a good
This is
idea.
what we're gonna do, just to refresh them every year, maybe.
Utility bills too. And,
Mhm.
not that a lot of people don't even look at their utility bills, but
I try not to.
Ignore them, they go away.
How much just
No.
writes in the check?
I feel the mailman don't fit in the box.
Okay.
You're doing great, Brian.
Well, thanks.
Keep going.
That's about the end of my list, though. Is there anything to do with this map over here?
I don't know. I've asked each individual in the council how we can increase our tax revenue and not increase taxes. And I have been given some answers, finally. It took a while. But there are some ways. And so collectively, I think we need to put it on the table what these ways and means are to get this done. And so there is a way, there are other ways. The way that had been suggested was to annex some land into the city. I talked to two landowners about this, and they said, keep me in the loop. They were excited about it, realizing that it would benefit them if they were annexed into the city. Those names are confidential right now, but I know some other people who have been confronted with it, with this same scenario. Can't do it all at once, okay? It's not a done deal. You just don't do all the annexing that can be done in one fell swoop. It won't work. Because there would be too many negatives toward it. But that is a way that our tax revenue could increase for the city and not raise taxes. So there's land that these people that own, that are on this area that we're contemplating. And that's, if there's one against it, it's a no deal. But if everybody that owns that land is for being annexed into the city, it's a very easy fix. It's non-contested. If it's contested, then you run into trouble. But the city I worked for in Florida was growing at an average of 50 people per month. And that was the only way they could do it, was to annex more land. And housing projects were going like you can't believe. It's just amazing. That was the fastest growing city and the fastest growing county in the whole state of Florida at that time, the last 7 years I worked there. And It's amazing, but it worked. So put it in your thought process and see which, if you think it's a feasible thing to do. I know several other people, it would be a cleanup on some areas that need to be cleaned up. There also contains watershed in some of those places. There's agricultural land that would be involved. So you have to ask questions and find out what the answers may be. But it is a way. And that would not only benefit the city having more tax revenue coming in and not have to raise the taxes of people that are already in the city.
I guess I don't understand enough about annexation. So a city can actually just sit down and say, we want more tax revenue, we want to annex you into our city. There doesn't have to be a reason like a development coming in or it's just we want more land for.
It's their land,
Oh.
if they want to be annexed in, so they can use that land to do whatever they want to. If they want to make a housing development, so be it. If they want to open a business, so be it. It's still their land, and they're going to be paying taxes on that land.
Mhm.
So therefore, they have the right to do whatever they want to do with that land. Even though the city says we're going to annex this in because we can see in the future, this may be an area for another park. This may be an area for another business. Your agricultural land that would be annexed in would still remain agricultural.
Right.
Unless the individual that owns that land says, hey, I've got enough land here that I could plot lots out and sell them for people to build houses on. And that's another plus. The city does need housing. If we're going to grow, we need more housing.
If we annex like that, what kind of responsibility does that leave us with infrastructure like?
Depends
Does
on
that mean
where it
they don't
is.
get
If
city
there's no
utilities?
roads to the thing, the city's responsible to get streets. But if the other utilities are there, water, sewer are already in that area that is to be annexed, the only thing they have lacking is electric. And so they're close enough to the grid to be on that.
So there would be some expense involved in doing it.
There would be some expense, but where's that money gonna come from? The increased taxes that will be to bring into the city, almost pay for itself. So, mull it over. To me, it is a way, not the only way.
Would it be too much or too close to disclosing the landowners if you were able to show us on the map? Where you were thinking?
Probably.
Okay, then never mind.
Yeah, it would be,
Okay.
but I mean, like I said, I've talked to several people, and they're all for it. Other people may not be, but there's two different places that they want this to happen. And
Is there some reason why they haven't approached the city before this?
have no clue. All I do know is that some of the land that would be annexed into the city has been owned for how many years? 20, 25, 30 years. It's been owned, and nothing's been developed with it.
So for instance, if we went west, say, towards the country club and the airport and the cemetery, we get tax money, I'm going to assume right now, from the county for the airport and the cemetery, because it's not our ground.
We don't get any taxes for the cemetery.
Okay, so that would still be a wash, we still wouldn't have any money, revenue from those two.
It's only when there's improvements added.
Okay.
And just to share, I've had at both ends of my career the experience of working in a high-growth area. Sugar Grove, Illinois, which is used to be a suburb of Aurora, now it's surrounding Aurora. And then over in Tiffin, which is in that North Liberty, Coralville, Iowa City area, that's just, last year they put up 300 new houses. But it's all driven by the market pressure of folks wanting to be proximate to the hospital and what have you. And they were voluntary annexations, and the property owners or the developers put forth agreements, draft agreements, we'll annex for this, that, and the other, under residential one zoning classification. And of course they wanted assistance, and the city of Tiffin did allow for some TIF increment money to be used that was paid from the developer paying taxes to help support the infrastructure. But the onus was on the developer, and the expectation there was that the developer built the streets, put in the infrastructure, and really bore the risk, which is their incentive then to make sure that they actually developed and sold property. So there's always an ongoing negotiation on a development agreement, but the city of Tiffin and the village of Sugar Grove both put the risk on the developer / owner, because neither one of them could afford, and I could tell a great development horror story about Sugar Grove, where they thought that the risk was not going to land on them for a particular tax-funded infrastructure project, and it didn't work out, and it was ugly. But I was just an intern then, and I only thought I could see trouble coming. I thought everybody else that was much smarter than me knew what they were doing. Turned out they didn't.
Hey Brian, can I follow up on Lauren's question? Because I'm wondering why these people don't just, if they're this interested in it, why don't they ask for voluntary immunization? What's stopping them?
They intend to do that
I mean,
if
if they're that interested and
it's
they want to be
accessible.
we should just come to the city and ask for it.
Yeah.
I did the last annexation on the south side of town and didn't ask for anything from the city. Got it done, and it was,
Yeah.
rather.
They have to petition it,
Yeah.
yeah. But those people that are going to petition are going to be for the annexation.
Right.
The rest of them, if there's anybody that doesn't want this done, then they don't petition the city to do this.
Right.
But if they petition the city to do it, and everybody's on the same page, we want this done, then it goes through much
It's almost,
no humps to crawl over.
it's almost impossible to compel someone to
Right.
annex,
Yeah, you
unless you
can't force them.
surrounded them.
If they're a landowner, you cannot force them to be annexed into the city. But when they see what the good can be for the city and what the good can be for them as well, because then they don't have a problem with being annexed into the city. And it's not going to, there could be like 3 phases to get this done.
I'd say have them come forward then.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'm going to first of all assume that the county property taxes are a lot cheaper than once they become city, annexed into the city.
My landlord lives in the country and he pays more taxes on his property out there than he does a house in town, 2 houses in town.
Well, I would assume that normally that's the case, that.
A lot of times it is.
Yeah.
Based on the valuation.
So if they were to annex, unless they were gonna do a development, they're just going to pay higher taxes, right? I mean, what are the other benefits? We'll run streets to them and sewer and water,
Oh, no.
That's usually the hook,
Streets,
is the
sewer,
extension
water.
of utilities.
And-
which is going to be fairly costly.
And if they're going, well, it depends on where they are, how close the the sewer, water, and electric are to that property. And
Well, we had that with Bo, and that wasn't very far away, and it was
It
gonna
was
cost
just
a.
far enough that he couldn't connect to the water.
Right, that he couldn't come into the city line, and it was gonna be enough money to us that it wasn't
So he didn't wanna pay that to connect either, so he ended up with a well.
Some of
But he's
that,
got the other utilities.
some of the McClure study where they showed those, water retention ponds to help with the, this, that, and not, some of them are not in city limits, right?
and then
So if you're gonna put something like that in, you'd have to bring that in, wouldn't you?
They'd have to agree to, you'd have to make it to their benefit for them to accept the improvements on their property. And you don't necessarily have to annex to provide a utility benefit for a community, but it would be likely. I mean, in those cases, I'm gonna guess that their property value is already this, and their bump in taxes is not gonna be great. And there are ways to offset that as well. I mean, I've done in the past a rebate agreement in a not dissimilar circumstance where, in order to benefit the community at large, it was worth $500 a year or whatever it was in their increase in taxes for a period of, I think in Illinois, the longest you can go is 20 years. Or if they ever sought to develop the property, then boom, their rebate was over. So it's possible, it's a matter of getting agreements.
that was,
I want to talk about a
Hey,
community
wait.
center.
huh?
Want to talk about the community center? We could show that on the map.
Yeah,
You can show it.
you're talking about wanting to put in a community center. Where would be the best place to put in a community center?
Right into the legwork on this. This is timber lots.
How about right smack in the middle of the county, the physical center of the county? It's over here on 7th Street. And all the property that's around there is for sale.
Well, we thought we'd do a trade, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Where's that?
7th Street.
Oh, it's 6. Where's the school? Little school. Right here?
Yeah.
Too far.
Where's that industrial thing
Right.
at?
Back to your left.
That
Cummins
is-
Building.
that-
Cummins Building?
Yeah.
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 Right in there.
No.
No, they have like a,
Where those,
just a.
They had like a warehouse there.
Oh, okay.
They had a business there.
Kind of down by Friends of Animal.
Yeah.
There's a rock in town right near there that's.
By Lamb's
Yeah,
Green
there's the physical center.
facility, yeah.
Of the county.
The courthouse is
And all these buildings around here are for
and
sale.
then the physical center.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do a swap.
Let's do a swap or something.
Yeah,
Swap that land for,
community center, right there, right in between the two schools.
yeah. And would that benefit everybody in the city? Have a civic center? Would it benefit everybody in the county to have a civic center in the center of the county?
Just
Certainly
the,
would.
it's Chad's boy, just like that governor,
Exactly.
Rezac,
Mhm.
talked about a place for the kids to go. And that community center being right between the two schools.
Oh, across the street.
It's a short walk.
It would be halfway between the two schools.
Closer to the,
Yeah. A little bit,
Across the street from the farm service.
right? And there's another thing that, with this bomb sitting over there at Farm Service, if that thing explodes, you know how much territory it'll wipe
I
out?
don't think we'd want the community center right there.
That's why I'm saying, get that thing moved too.
Well,
Do
there's,
it
there
out
has
here.
been discussions
Do
in
it
the
outside.
last few years
Huh?
about that with farm service.
It's a huge yard. If that thing would explode, it'd take a half a mile every direction from it. That's a lot of area.
Yeah.
That is a big, dangerous bomb sitting right in the center of the city.
How has it
Needs to
been
be
there?
moved.
Long time.
Yeah.
And Virgil had been in discussions with farm service for the last few years about moving it out to where we have our LP tank. I'm just not sure what has transpired, where we sit with that. It's not like we haven't talked about it.
It'd be nice to get it away from
Yeah.
the residential areas and down. Because that'd take my house to where I live. It'd wipe me out. Half a mile, sure, it'd go all the way down to South Street. It'd take a big area of Tipton.
We'll all be living with Mark. Come into your backyard.
Sue has a house we could live in.
How was that for a look?
I guess I wasn't invited.
I think as far as the community center, we really want to keep our options open. There's a lot of development to the south that wouldn't involve as much expense trying to purchase all the properties.
Oh, we went and purchased, all the owners there would swap land for land.
They all agree to that.
I think Farm Service was on board, I can't remember what Tim said about that.
And some of the things, part of the area, I don't know if you drive out north a whole lot,
North,
but when you're going,
go past Walmart.
when you make this curve right here,
Yeah.
make this curve right here, look off this way, you see all this junk back here? All this. The city line ends right here. That's where the city,
On the Esther?
no, right here.
No,
There's the,
just west of,
Past
back on,
Williams's?
what is this, 13th Street?
past Bowie's stuff.
And Lynn, wherever
Yeah.
Lynn comes in. Just past Lynn Street is the county line. So all this would be annexed in. You got 3 businesses there would be annexed in plus that. And you could have development. You could have room over there for another park on the west side of town. You'd have an area where you clean up the waterway and they graze that out, pile it to one side, then build a walkway
Well, that's
or a
where
bike
the
trail around.
employer had that retention pond.
Yeah.
It's located in that spot.
This land that we annexed better bring in some big money.
There certainly are ways to leverage waterway reclamation project into open space and trails and whatnot. And if you're going to spend money to rectify stormwater issues or floodplain management, there's usually state money available. And it's
And
a matter of being
there
smart.
are grants to put in bridges or culverts that
Yep.
the water could flow through with no obstruction. Those grants are anywhere from 80 to 90% grants. And so all these things are available. We just need to make that decision and either go for it or forget it. Let Tipton just sink away into the
Well, there's,
sunset.
when, the last I knew, the state had funds available in the form of waived interest cost payments when you did, if you had to do a wastewater plant improvement and you borrowed $2 million to do the wastewater plant from the state revolving fund, and your interest cost was going to be $200,000, just to pull a number out of the air. the state would, if you had a project lined up and approved, the state would say, okay, you can take that $200,000 and use that for stormwater system improvements, which can include all kinds of creek and stormwater way improvements. And that, last year, that was still unavailable.
Was that RIF or whatever, Tom?
You might be thinking of the STP funds.
Maybe not. That's not-
Yeah. SRF, State Revolving Fund monies. But that was to induce better stormwater management practices, such as green space.
I just had something just a little more off the topic. But, when I first came on council, and I don't know if it was, I'm going to assume it was Doug, but the city had done a kind of proposed to all the department heads to come in maybe 10% under their last year's budget, which really
That was
worked well.
Cost savings.
A cost savings
yes.
program, yeah. And I got thinking today only about, because it's been 5 years, not that they can do that much more cutting, but I've thought about, and I don't micromanage, but I'm wondering if all of the departments at this time have excess or surplus equipment, things that it could be a good time to go through and maybe start gleaning that also to just sell. And
One thing about that too, Pam, is that shack out back is full. It's moldy in there. So we talked about.
The American Legion building?
Yes,
Oh,
we
yeah.
talked about,
shack.
yeah, somebody had come last year to see Chris and asked if they could look at it, if they were interested in it. He said they walked in the door and he said you could just smell it.
Oh.
And the basement, I think, has a lot too.
Mm-hmm.
But he had suggested we get that cleaned up, or cleaned out, and then have a big list of things to sell. So maybe that would be a good opportunity to get that done too.
I mean,
American
We can bring
Legion
that
right
to you
across the
as
alley from City Hall.
request to dispose
to
of
the
surplus
west.
equipment.
yeah, let's do it.
It's a good site.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, I could definitely
but it's, yeah.
That probably needs to be.
Heck, we could
leveled.
get in the citywide garage sale.
Oh,
Just kidding.
Working on for
are you
hours.
sure you're not related to my wife? They're in the garage sale. My goodness.
Oh, I'm so fucking-
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Because we're nearing the hour limit.
You don't have a gavel though, to gavel us out.
I just have one
Plastic
thing
cup.
that's kind of come up in the last few weeks, or month maybe. We have, the development to the south of South Street, and there's no sidewalk out there. And Progressive Rehab has opened their doors,
Oh.
and we had a citizen walking along the edge of the road and fell.
Oh.
So we talked about, okay, how can we get a sidewalk in there? And Steve had said that several years ago when that was developing, that they talked about that, but it has to be, when you brought up culverts and bridges, it made me think of it. It has to be a over the ditch kind of sidewalk. And it's a metal structure that you have to buy. And I think when they looked into it at that time, it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago, it was like $80,000. But that's something I think we need to be
Yeah, because
working on or thinking about, or how we can fund that to,
the
because we
DOT,
could be in a lot of trouble.
the
You're
DOT,
talking about
actually-
the area by the Pizza Hut?
Going south,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
the DOT actually has a lot of grant programs for that.
Good,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And they're talking about redoing
38,
38 through town in 3 years.
The rest of it, you mean?
Yeah.
What do we have to have done for that?
Well, it's their project, but it's a good time to pile in on their contracting effort with additional work such as sidewalks. And then they can leverage those sidewalk dollars into a project that the city contributes toward.
We're still responsible for the parking, aren't we, Tim?
That's ours,
Yeah.
but there is no better time to tackle infrastructure than when the state's tearing up a highway. Because that's the biggest expense. Absolutely. And I would expect that that would be part and parcel of that whole project. So we need to have some numbers in place, some estimates in place so that we know what we could be in for. The engineering work is usually done by the state DOT, and then the city pays a prorated share of that engineering cost, and then prorated share of whatever or that part of the project. But it's the best time to do it. You never get cheaper.
All right, with that, is there a motion to adjourn this work session?
So moved.
Leeper with the first,
Second.
Anderson with the second.
Leeper,
Yes.
McNeil,
Yes.
Boots,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Spear.
Yes.
This meeting is adjourned at 6:32.